Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Governance and Audit and Standards Committee. I'm Leo Madden, Chair of the Committee. I'd like to draw your attention to some housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble the Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, if you sign into the Guildhall, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Can I please remind all attendees to turn their microphones on to speak and then off again once you have finished speaking. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. So what I'd like to do is go around and do some introductions, if I may. I'll come back to you, Peter. I'll do members first.
Councillor Graham Heaney, St Jude Ward, Deputy Leader of the Labour Group.
Councillor Stuart Brown, Liberal Democrat, Fratton Ward and Vice Chair of the Committee.
Councillor Emily Strudwick, Hilsey Ward, Portsmouth Independent Party.
Councillor Benedict Swan, Copman and Anchorage Park Ward, Conservative Party.
Thank you. Peter, I'll start with you now.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
Thank you.
Abigail Clements, Portsmouth City Council.
Sorry, you're from procurement?
Yes.
I think, could you say that?
Abigail Clements, Procurement.
Good morning, Richard Locke, Assistant Director for Procurement. Abigail's joining me today and she's joined in the contract management role.
Elizabeth Goodwin, Chief Internal Auditor.
Helen Magri, Data Protection Officer.
Richard Webb, Deputy Director of Finance.
Helen Clem, Finance Manager, Technical Financial Planning.
James Harris, Senior Local Democracy Officer.
Paddy May, Corporate Strategy Manager.
Thank you, Paddy. Thank you. So, James, have we any apologies for absence?
I've not been notified of any unless members have any they wish to announce.
No, okay, thank you. Any members or anybody got any declaration of interest? No, thank you. Can we then go on to the minutes of the item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of January 2024. I'll do them for accuracy and matters arising, and I'll use the big page numbers that we've got, starting with page 5. Okay, members, page 5, page 6. We haven't got external audit here today, but on under 4, I attended a webinar. Sounds good, doesn't it? With the Department of whatever and other people involved, talking about the problems that the national audit people were having. This was a couple of weeks back. They all sang. They were wonderful. I don't know if were any of you at this webinar, weren't it? Well, there were about 5 different people talking to us, but saying the same thing. But very, very professional. I mean, it really was. It was very good. Anyway, the outcome was that everything should be all right by November. I forgot that right by November this year. And it's funny, one of the questions that somebody asked was, what happens to the money we pay over if it's not completed in time? And so we're told we get it back. So it's as external officer, it's all in train, and hopefully we'll be back on stream and not too far from here. Thank you. Page 6, page 7, page 8. I don't know, Lizzie, on the whistleblowing bit about councillors and whistleblowing. Anything? Have you any update on that?
The update is when councillors have their induction, it is going to be included as part of your induction pack, some narrative around whistleblowing, and it will be led by monitoring officer.
Is that that's the first you heard of that, Peter, was it? Okay, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11. Can I sign those as true record members? Well, that's lucky because I've already done so. So that's very kind of you. Thank you. Can we move on to item 4, data security breaches report? And Helen Magri's here. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that we bring to this committee twice a year, and it details all of the data security breaches that have been reported to the Corporate Information Governance team. So there's a robust process reporting those breaches. And it details the nature of the breach and action that we've taken. So it's quite an unremarkable period. There's nothing significant really to report. All of the trends are similar to previous reporting periods. There weren't any breaches that reached the threshold for reporting to the Information Commissioner's Office, and we didn't have any incidents reported back to us by the Information Commissioner in that period. So just outlines the statistics and shows you the nature of those breaches. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Well, Helen, thank you for that. And you're right, most of it, everything is human error, isn't it? And it's funny, I had a little conversation with Lizzie about other things earlier on. I said, we're all going to make mistakes. But I just wonder, for instance, though, it seems, I'll just pick one out, that's all. And it's a form, children's families, a form was sent to a school containing information relating to the wrong pupil. Now, that doesn't look very good. I presume it's a pupil in the same school, to start with anyway, I hope. But what would the director think of that? And what are the directors actually doing to reduce the amount of human error?
We are working with the business area every time there is an incident. So looking at what the root cause of that incident was, and particularly in the case of information being sent by email, making sure staff have done the relevant training, thinking about whether there's an alternative means of sharing that information. We've got SharePoint now, which is a better means really of sharing information. That particular incident, it was a child of the same name, and it got shared with the school in error. So on our records, it would show which school a child was at, and it was a child of the same name, but and it was the wrong school. So the school reported it back to us immediately, and they deleted their records, and it was sent to the correct school. That particular incident, it wouldn't reach the threshold for reporting to the Information Commissioner's Office, and that's on the basis of risk of harm. So the information, although it's regrettable that it's been shared with the wrong school, they are a trusted partner. You know, they've confirmed that information has been deleted. It wouldn't have been shared any further or used for any other purpose, and they notified us immediately. But yes, you're right. The majority of errors are, or breaches are, as a result of human error. And the Information Commissioner acknowledges that that will probably always be the case, but they will look to us to see what we're doing to, try to minimise those breaches. So exactly the sort of things I've mentioned, making sure staff have appropriate training, making sure there are robust processes and procedures for doing things and that staff are aware of those. But ultimately, people will always make mistakes, unfortunately, and it's really what we do about it. But in all of the breaches we have reported over the years to the Information Commissioner, they've always been happy with the action we've taken. So we have never had any further action, or certainly not in recent years. I mean, years ago, there was we had to sign an undertaking when some information was shared incorrectly, but that was, 15 years ago, maybe almost now. But since then, every breach we've reported, the Information Commissioner has been happy with the action that we've taken and the case has been closed. So I feel as though, you know, we're reporting at the right level, we're taking appropriate action, but we are constantly trying to look at ways that we can change processes or improve things to reduce that risk of human error.
Thank you, Helen. Could I just say that, is it, so from what you say then, is the recipient who would normally tell us that we've sent the wrong information?
That's not always the case. I mean, sometimes those errors are picked up immediately by somebody. They've immediately realised perhaps they've sent that email to the wrong person. But often that is the case. But thinking about the emails, yeah, I mean, often people will report to us that they've realised they've sent it to the wrong place. And there is an ability to recall an email. So if that email hasn't been read by the recipient, normally it is successful. If you try to recall the email, it will be recalled. If the recipient has opened the email, then it's not possible to recall it. But that's something we would always tell people to do. Immediately try to recall the email, and you can set that alert so that you get a message to say whether that recall was successful or not. But as I say, we're trying to encourage people not to be sending information by email, particularly if it's information that's routinely shared. SharePoint is a perfect means of sharing information. So there's that sort of more proactive way of setting up who you want to share the information with, and I think there's less room for error there. So as you'll see from the report, we're also working on a campaign. The first message has gone out to staff using our regular communication channels to remind staff all the time. We've got mail tips now set up on Outlook so that if you're sending an email to an external recipient, a little note will come up to warn you that that's what's happening and to get you to check you're sending it to the right person. So there's quite a lot of tools available in the Microsoft suite now that we're working on. So, and some of those are already being used.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Members, any comments or points? Councillor Heaney-Graham.
I noticed there are a couple here relating to either information or details not updated on Mosaic. Now, obviously, that implies there's a bit of a chain here that whoever's supposed to input the data might not be the person who sends something in error. So how are we handling that? How are we making sure that chain works and that things like Mosaic are properly updated?
And that is always a challenge. In those particular cases, we've suggested to the team who are sending the information to schools to contact the school in the first instance and double check that the child is actually still at that school. I mean, sometimes we don't even get told straight away when a child moves schools. So it is that particular area is a challenge, keeping a pace with, you know, children who move from one school to another. But in that case, social workers have been reminded that if they get to hear about a child who has moved school, to update that record immediately. So these breaches are being fed back to the senior management in children's social care, and they're reminding their managers to speak to their teams about all of those sort of things. So every breach that happens, we're working with the team to think about how that error has occurred and what we can possibly do.
Graham? Okay, oh, thank you very much. Any other members? Thank you. Helen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and carry on the good work.
Thank you.
Members, it's recommended that we note the breaches that have arisen. Agreed? Thank you very much. Thanks, Helen. Item 5 is Corporate Performance Report, Quarter 3, 2023-24. Long time no see, Paddy.
Indeed, Councillor.
I hope you are well.
Very well, thank you. I hope you are as well, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So this report is the regular quarterly performance report that's prepared by Kelly Nash, but unfortunately she can't make it today, so I'm presenting on her behalf. It reports on the whole organisation's performance, but does it on the basis of performance against sort of the corporate plan. This means that the report looks in detail at improving the lives of our residents, and there's much more information from page 37 of the report pack, protecting and enhancing our environment, which is on page 57, and our overall corporate health, which is on page 65. On each of these themes, there is a summary of achievements and positive progress, a summary of the challenges and risks, and a summary of the priorities for the next period. There's then a detailed set of performance indicators with a commentary for each of those three themes. Together, these give an overall picture of performance and also show how well we are achieving the corporate plan that the organisation approved last year. Section 4 of the report identifies key themes that are emerging from the whole report. For demand-led service, so the themes are, in summary, for demand-led services, the level of demand driven by need is high, particularly in children's services, adult services and housing. Interestingly, the Today programme on Radio 4 this morning picked up very similar issues nationally, and the leaders of Buckinghamshire and Cornwall were identifying similar areas of pressure as presented in this report. This actually then moves on in terms of challenges around costs, workforce, risks and outcomes. The report also identifies a theme around the strong work that's done on preventative practice. Examples given in the report include safe at home visits, and also some good examples of work, particularly in the people services, and also just picks up the wide breadth of activity that the council is undertaking. I think the preventative services hopefully over time will reduce some of the demand on the demand-led services. That's a sort of investment for the future. In terms of the final theme identified in the report, it's around challenges around the workforce, and particularly around recruitment and retention issues. The report also talks about the government's productivity plans. These were announced alongside the extra funding that was agreed in February. And paragraph 5.1 includes the announcement from the Secretary of State, where he says, this is why today we are asking local authorities to produce productivity plans setting out how they will improve service performance and reduce wasteful expenditure to ensure every area is making best use of taxpayers' money. It then has a very specific one. I encourage local authorities to consider whether expenditure on discredited equality, diversity and inclusion programmes meets this objective. There was then further information provided in start of February, which has the expectation of the 4 areas that the plan will cover. So the first area is around transformation of services to make better use of resources, opportunities to take advantage of technology and better use of data, ways to reduce wasteful spend within systems, and again, the equality, diversity and inclusion programmes were specifically mentioned, but said that doesn't include programmes around integration and civic pride and counter-extremism. And then finally, anything the central government could do in terms of removing barriers to help us do better and perform better. We are expecting further guidance on this in due course. The expectation is that they will be completed and sent to government by July this year, so there's not long for them to be done, and we haven't yet had the guidance. And I think the other thing to say is that the government have said that then future spending announcements may be based around these productivity plans, so they will become potentially quite important. But in terms of the reality of what you'll be able to get done in this sort of short period, it's whether something might develop over time, as we've seen in the past around things such as CPA, which developed incrementally over time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paddy, on that. Paddy, I was going to pick up on productivity plans, I have to say, and I don't know where we are with them because the deadline is sometime in July this year. I have to say I can't say the number of times I have in the time I've been to council seen similar plans and reductions and all the rest of it, so good luck to you on that. But it's getting a bit near. 5.5 then, further guidance will be issued. You mentioned that, Paddy, but nothing, I take it, to date.
We haven't received any guidance as of yet. The most recent we had was that 6th of February where they said the 4 areas it will cover. But actually we've seen no specific guidance. As you say, there isn't then long in terms of then getting it together. How
has this been dealt with at council level then? Is it cabinet?
We would then, we will put that through Cabinet in the first instance, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Just a couple of specific things. I don't know anybody on the productivity plans or the introduction. You okay on that? Yeah, thank you. Paddy, I just want, and thanks for this. We just said, just the page 38 and voids in the housing, right? We do know that there are voids, Paddy, for various reasons, but I think it would be useful in something like this to see how. So a problem's been caused. There's no longer end-to-end times in letting properties, but it'd be nice to know instantly how many voids there are and whether they've come up since the last time a report or whatever. I'd find that useful. That's all.
Yeah, we can sort of provide that, and we can, if people are interested, we can get that information outside, with the minutes if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Paddy. Yeah. Okay, members, I am impressed. The only thing is that there are some bits with no commentary, Paddy. I mean, is that because there's no need for a commentary? One bit does say there's no need for a commentary, but is that the reason, or just people haven't got round to it?
It's often it's a direct report of what the directors have given us, so it's often, yeah.
Well, could you tell them to put a commentary in then? Okay, thank you. Members, any points in this? Councillor Heaney-Graham.
It's a slightly flippant one, but you can see why I've picked it out. If you look at page 53, it says City Centre North, start date 13th of the 7th, 1905. It might feel like it's been going since 1905, but I don't think that's the intended date. I say it feels like that, but it doesn't. I'm sure
apologies, we'll get that corrected.
No, I just show you. I do look at reports. Yeah, that one caught my eye as I was skimming through the papers. I just want to ask a couple of questions about things. Obviously, this is reporting on what we've done, in a sense, not what's going to happen in the future. But I notice you comment on the Homes to Ukraine scheme, and it's likely current funding to end in 3rd of July. I'm a bit confused. I thought that they'd extended that, have they?
They have, although unfortunately not before this report.
Not before the report was
submitted.
Out,
so yes, so actually you're correct. That has been extended, but at a lower level, and the visas, any new people coming in, it's a lesser visa than they've had in the past.
Yeah. Okay. I think one other. I should have put a little sticker in this. I forgot to put the sticker in. Where did I do? I marked it up. Oh yes, it was on page 59. Have we had on the waste recycling? Have we had confirmation of what the this is in terms of our recycling rate? It is subject to definite confirmation, usually from October onwards. Is this October last year or October this year?
It would be October 24, because I think it's the October 23 provisional data we've got there already. So right. Yeah, so it's that one needs to be confirmed. But
so we're still waiting for that.
Waiting for that confirmation.
Right, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that was the other one. I have one other, but I've lost it, so I'll leave it because I'll pick it up later. Just one quick comment on the productivity plans. I mean, I think there is something that I think could be useful. You'll be aware that the Scrutiny Management Panel did do a review of systems thinking process, and we had some quite interesting presentations from a number of different areas of the council about how they've been able to improve productivity in many ways, seeing more people and making more efficient use of the time. So I think we probably have some scope there which we could do. I mean, I think I'm disappointed that government, whilst it says it wants to do things about this, sets timescales which are really completely unrealistic, given that we're about to go into local elections and in fact we can't do much. And July, I mean, we will just be back into this. I mean, it doesn't help councils and elected members to make sensible decisions about this. It is important to do the things that they're saying. I think it is right. But I do think it's really disappointing that they don't seem to understand the sort of work that's required, and the implication that we haven't been doing some stuff already as well is almost implied in the comments. But yeah, we could do with better timescales for that.
Councillor Bryan.
Thank you, Chair. Paddy, thanks for coming along to talk to the report today. You mentioned, I think, that the KPIs and the stats we've got are based on a plan that was approved last year. So it's obviously still quite new, quite bedding in. I can see there's a lot of areas that don't have a target set for them. Have we got some sort of mechanism moving forward for establishing targets where they're missing and for reviewing the existing targets against the KPIs where they're there to make sure that they are actually, you know, the right targets, that they're robust, that as time goes forward and, you know, more data becomes apparent in different areas, we are measuring ourselves against the right benchmarks?
Yeah, I think that's all good points, and I think there's clearly, obviously, we're back. You know, quarter four's coming towards the end. There will then the chance to get that for the start of the new financial year, and again, we'll be making sure we're working with directorates around that. We are sort of like regularly taking things through the directors' board around this sort of issue, and again, Natalie, the new chief exec, is very keen that that is something that is addressed. So.
Okay, thank you, members. Members, can we, item 5, can we note the report in the revised form and agree of any further action? The further action I just mentioned is required in response to performance issues highlighted. Okay, members. Thank you very much. Paddy, thank you very much, and nice to see you again. Item 6 is the internal audit plan 24-25. Lizzie will be addressing this. Lizzie, we had a quick discussion beforehand, didn't we, just about how you actually, in your talking with directors, how you come to the plan and how you need to be persuaded that a particular one that you want to put on board at a particular time doesn't happen onto a future date. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. So the audit plan, obviously, we present to you around this time each year. It's the list of activities that we're going to be covering because around approximately July, need to historically give a review or an opinion in relation to the effectiveness of the internal control framework. So what you have on the table in front of you is a list of the areas that we will be covering for 24-25. When drafting what is going to be included, we have something called an audit universe that has every activity that could be subject to an internal audit review. It has a number of considerations that are included within that. For example, what is the driving factor of that particular activity? What's the risk exposure? What's the monetary values? Have we had any problems or issues? At the beginning part of the year, usually around December, I would have gone through the universe to have determined what I consider I should be including within the audit plan. I sit down with directors because I am duty bound to do so, but I will maintain independence in that what is included in the plan is ultimately my decision to put forward to you. Across the authority, obviously I have various conversations with all of the directors and other relevant parties. Chief Exec, External Audit, Chair of this committee is also included for any consideration as to what we may need to cover. The plan has to be aligned to the risk exposure of the authority, which is the corporate risk exposure. And it also has to be aligned to the priorities of the organisation. So anything that doesn't meet those criteria is excluded from the plan. On a quarterly basis, I will be reviewing the plan. So as the risk exposure flexes, changes, we can take on board what we perhaps may need to amend to include to reflect those changing dynamics. You are aware that external audit is under extreme difficulty signing off the accounts, and you will also be aware that the Redmond review indicated that external audit will have the ability to explain if they have not covered areas. This is very new. As that progresses, we will need to consider whether internal audit picks up some of these. The external audit, nothing to do with signing off the accounts, that is totally down to them, but in relation to if they're not independently reviewing or inspecting a particular area, then we need to consider whether that is something that we need to factor in kind of moving forward. So I think that probably covers most of the narrative around what gets included, how it gets included, how it gets reevaluated, so I'm happy to take any particular comments. There is two minor amendments, if I could just draw your attention to, both of which are on page 83. For clarity, middle way down the page, there is a title that states water quality. For clarity, that is Legionella, not water quality of the seafront, which I know there is a separate big issue, but this particular one is the Legionella side of the equation. And two below that is also the housing area offices. And again, if I can just clarify, should have put in brackets, we're talking about the cash arrangements at the area offices, not others at this particular time. The scope of what will be covered for the individual reviews are determined nearer the time of the audit, and that there is a methodology that is sat behind that determines what gets covered. When some of the directors have a request for when a particular audit comes on the table, I will consider that, because the timing of the reviews are quite important. For example, we do very limited work within finance this time of year because they are heavily involved in the preparation of new budgets. So directors can discuss with me at any stage, and any of my colleagues, regarding when something potentially gets audited, just for clarity.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? No, thank you very much. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for that explanation. Members, then, do we approve the proposed internal audit plan for 24-25? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Item 7 is the Treasury Management Policy for 24-25. Richard.
So I'm going to hand over to Helen for this one.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Treasury Management Policy for 23-24 for you to note. It will then go on to Cabinet and full Council for approval. It's an annual strategy that seeks out on a risk basis how the Council manages its temporary surplus cash flows. In other words, how it manages the money in and out of its bank account. The Treasury Management Policy sets out the criteria and limits on investment to ensure that the Council is provided with assurance that it has secure, well-diversified and risk-managed approach to all Treasury management activity. The cornerstones of the Treasury Management Policy are set out in legislation and as such apply to all local authorities, and these are relating to security, to only place temporary funds with secure counterparties, liquidity, to ensure that the cash is available when the Council needs it, it's required, and then yield to achieve the best return that we can once the first two criteria of security and liquidity have been met. We would also like to provide some training to the members on Treasury management during this year, and also to note that there are no changes to the policy for this year compared to last year. Happy to take any questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Helen. I have to say I enjoy this report. I say that every year, but I am interested in a worldwide and a national picture on this, and it's very good. The one thing I thought about when I was reading this was when you're doing short-term investments, how do you come to make a decision in relation to that short-term investment? It's not necessarily the return, is it? It's well, I'll leave it, yeah.
We use outside advisors like Moody's and Fitch to give us the credit rating of the people that we are placing our investments with. We have limits as to how much money we can invest in certain organisations, building societies, banks, local authorities. This time of year we are making quite a bit of investment in local authorities because of how their cash flows operate. They generally are short of cash at this time because your council tax, which is one of your main income sources, we have a holiday in February and March, so there's no collection at that time. So we look at the criteria. We have an evaluation criteria. We're not investing in anyone which hasn't had the 21-22 accounts audited. We're not looking at anybody, for instance, who is at risk of a Section 114 notice going through. So we have a strict framework that we use and we apply to all our investment decisions.
Okay. So we haven't invested in Birmingham then? No.
No, Chair, we haven't.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, members? Councillor Graham.
I just have one question. I was looking at Appendix 5.3 and you say you have a set of what you call sector and geographic investment limits set out in the report, and that's figures of, I mean, I understand those. But within the geographic ones, for example, there can be things that change over time. You know, there can be a political crisis, an economic crisis, which impacts on an area like Asia or America or whatever. So although we have those limits, presumably we do have intelligence about what's going on. So we might not go to that limit. You know, we might then decide not to. That is the case, and that's how we work on that. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely right. The instance with Qatar last year in human rights, for instance, we had some money placed with banks out of there, but with monitoring the external environment and seeing what's going on and responding also to creditworthiness of our counterparties, we make decisions whether to continue investment or not, or to actually reduce the limit that we are investing with certain third parties.
Okay. Any other point, comments, members? No. Okay, can we then, can we note the recommendations in section 3 of the report? And as you can see from the report, and as Helen said, it goes on to full council anyway on the 19th of March. Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. Thank you. Paddy, I don't know, do you want to go? You don't have to. Sorry. Yeah, I know it's very exciting, Paddy, but I don't want to hold you back. Thank you for coming, Paddy. It is. I'm not lying, Richard. I do find it riveting. I wish I could invest the same way you do and make profits, but I'm not very good at that, so I don't bother. When I move into item 8, we've got, this is on procurement management information. We've got white bits and we've got orange bits. The orange bits, of course, being confidential. Can we deal, first of all, with the white bits, i.e. the information that's in the public domain, and if members then wish to ask any questions, we'll go into exempt, on the exempt bit, we'll go into exempt session. So, okay. So, Richard, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. The report's in the usual format. I'll take you through some of the areas where we've made some progression since the last report we come biannually. The other thing that hopefully you'll note within the report is the references to the forthcoming procurement reforms. So that's been on the table for a long time now, been significantly delayed, but finally got royal assent at the back end of last year. Secondary legislation is due to come out next month, April at the latest, we're being told by Cabinet Office, and then that will give us a 6-month implementation. So as I go through the report, I'll highlight some of the implications of that, but one other thing just to mention to committee, there's going to be a lot of training, almost too much training, that's going to come out from government and others, but some of it will be directed towards overviews for councillors. So if the committee would be interested, I could come back in the summer after the elections, once we've got some more of that guidance, and provide an overview of the implications of the procurement reform and the local impacts and what we're doing to manage those, if that would be of interest, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go through the report now then. So we've got the usual aspects, one which is around how we're doing in terms of our transparency obligations. Where are we in terms of direct awards of high value contracts where there hasn't been competition or advertisement, and how are we doing in managing our contracts through our KPI model. So in terms of performance comparison, in relation to transparency, we're above the 95% target. I think we're around about 98% for everything that's processed entirely through Fusion. One area fell below 95%, which was CFE, but upon review, all of those transactions are actually to do with educational funding transfers which don't come under the procurement regime. So once they're taken off, they're actually 100%. So that's where we are in respect of the fusion spend. In terms of spend through other systems, this is where the purchase order doesn't go through Fusion, it goes through Mosaic or Controc or Scala, but the invoice is still paid through Fusion. We don't have the automated controls. We have been doing quite a lot of work since the last committee meeting to make some improvements there, particularly after the last committee meeting. Some concerns were raised in particular in respect to Controc, where we process our social care payments. So we've now moved from 49% compliance with Controc to up to 83%. I'm pretty confident that by the time we come to the next committee meeting, we'll have that fully cracked. It doesn't have the automated processes though, so we do have to build some links between systems to get it more efficient, but some good work there, and a lot of that has to go towards colleagues in adult social care as well for assisting on that and prioritising it. Scala with the port, we're 100% compliant there now. We have all of the utilities contracts on the system, so that's good work with colleagues in housing, neighbourhood and buildings that manage those contracts. We've got the CHAPS payments with Colas Ensign, which are being covered now. So really the last one we've got to focus on is Mosaic with children's social care. So we seek to get that addressed before the next committee meeting. Well, the next time we come, the procurement management information we come biannually. Looking at the actual transactions, they're all relatively low risk. A lot of them are to do with placements where there is scarcity of supply and come under the less regulated aspects of the procurement regulations. We'd also have to be mindful when we act transparently there that we have to do redacted information to make sure we don't put out potentially personal information in respect of those individuals. Would you like me to pause at this point, Chair, for any questions section by section, or just run through the report? What's the preference?
Please run through the report,
Run through,
Richard,
okay.
okay, and then maybe we can pick up. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So moving on to the next part, which is direct awards. There has been a bit of a change since the last committee meeting because we've had the new contract procedure rules which have come in, which have moved the delegated authority to directors from 100 up to £150,000. And we have also taken away a good chunk of red tape that we self-imposed upon ourselves in terms of making direct awards in relation to things like grants, other aspects where we have a clear justification under the regulations for the direct award, but our previous rules were compelling us to have to complete waivers, which was looking like we were doing something wrong when we weren't. So it is the first report since the rules have come in, so I wouldn't want to suggest that this is anything definitive in terms of a trend, but as it stands, we have halved the amount of direct awards that are being reported. So again, no high-risk direct awards. So high risk would be where we're in clear breach of the regulations, we don't have a mitigation strategy, and we're at high risk of challenge. So 0 of those to report. On a medium basis, we do have one anomaly to draw attention to, which is in the report, which is where in terms of spot purchasing. So social care, we have to act very dynamically to place people into appropriate care. That doesn't lead itself to competitive tendering processes. We have to act a lot faster than that. We need to pay a lot more attention to, obviously, the needs of the individuals and the families. We are very much on the market norm when we compare ourselves to our peer authorities. So it looks like a massive number in terms of the value there, but we've got a simple mitigation strategy, which is just to publish an advert, which means that if anyone does want to come on board on that supply chain, there's a means of them accessing and getting those opportunities. Okay, going forwards under the reform, we will have to be a lot more transparent in terms of when we publish various notices out for direct awards, but I'll cover that as we find out more when the secondary legislation comes in. In terms of the last part of the report, on the KPIs, so joined by Abigail today, who started in my team in January, who's done a lot of really good work on this particular aspect. So We're still in the piloting phase, so we've moved from 70 contracts to over 100 contracts that are subject to the KPI. But the number of KPIs that have come up for reporting within Q3 is trebled. We've still managed to get 100% of those all being complete. So under the old KPI model, it was around about 20%, 25% of people actually completing the KPIs. So really good take up and getting some good feedback from the actual contract managers. I think we've got a bit of work to do to further refine the process, particularly in relation to the detail that goes into the justification summaries. And it's also helping us to pick up some instances where we can provide some additional contract management support. So not just getting the KPIs reported, but helping the contract managers to do even better jobs than they are. In terms of the actual numbers, again, no contracts being reported that need to be terminated with immediate effect or are going through the throes of termination, so no zeros or ones. A fair number where there's improvements that need to be made, but is things that can be remedied, and we're working with the contractors, and a fair number of contracts that are performing very well or even above the level of performance that was expected under the contract. Moving forward, we do now want to start to roll out at pace. We'll have to work with our software provider Intend to see what we can do to get the reporting function a bit more streamlined. It does take a lot of work to get this information at the moment. Our target, though, is to roll out to all contracts of £1 million and above. That roughly comes to 300 contracts. That's an extra sort of 200 contracts from where we are. And that equates to at least 80-90% of our actual spend. So on a kind of Pareto proportionality basis, if we crack that, we've got the vast significant amount of our spend covered under the contract management KPIs. That's going to become even more important as we go forward with the reform. There's a slight typo in the report, I do apologise. It's actually going to be contracts above £5 million that we have to publish KPIs out for in the future, not £2 million. We learned that from some previous recent training. Some contracts will still be exempt though, so light touch regime contracts to the person like social care and children's services, we won't have to publish out the KPIs. But every new contract covered under the new procurement regime above £5 million will have to actually publish out KPIs that suppliers and everyone can see. Luckily, that is all things going forward. We don't have to go retrospectively across 200 contracts and introduce new terms, and which would be very painful, working that through with contract managers and suppliers to change significant parts of the terms. That's everything on the white paper, Chair. Would you like me to stop for any questions at this point?
Yeah, please, Richard.
Yeah.
Councillor Brian Stewart. No. Councillor Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, I've got two things I just wanted to get some clarification on, if I may. So we'll start with the KPIs, as that's where we ended up on. So as we can see in the Q1 report, we had 14 KPI contracts due to report, and in Q3 there were 44. But the total value between those two periods remains about the same, a little over 1.2 billion. So does that mean that we've seen a transition away from large, high-value contracts to a larger number of smaller contracts worth the same amount in total? Or because it seems to me a bit strange that the 8 contracts we had that were worth 1.1 billion in Q1 are now reporting as 12 contracts but worth less than £500 million, and that the value, the balance between the 1.1 and the 400 million has shifted into 32 smaller contracts. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, in terms of explanation, when we brought the report last time, we had focused attention into our really big high-value contracts, so the highways, PFI, our major term service contracts for housing. And in a lot of our contract spend, a good 50% is actually only in about 20% of our contracts by number, probably even less than that. As we've rolled out further and moved from 70 contracts into 100, we have got a slightly higher number in terms of total lifetime spend, but not that much significantly higher because so much was covered off in the first phase. So that's why it looks a bit strange in terms of the figures there. In respect of the numbers of the KPIs, we had 14 last time because the KPIs run on mostly on a quarterly basis. Some of the contracts though run on a end of actual contract basis. So some of our works contracts are much more transactional in nature. So the first time round we didn't have that many that were due. The next time round though, due to a number of contracts coming towards the end, there's a lot more that have had to be reported on.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
And second point, spinning back to page 100 where are we? 136. So I just wanted some clarification around particularly the lines on Mosaic and Systems Link, where we've got, if not both quarters, and one or the other of them showing 0% compliance. So literally 100% of the spend was non-compliant. Is that because it's actually non-compliant, or is this a problem with the two systems talking to each other, so that it's showing as non-compliant even if technically they've done nothing wrong in terms of procurement processes?
Yeah.
Is it more a reporting error, systems thing?
When we talk about compliance in this part of the report, it's transparency compliance. It's not necessarily saying that those contracts have been let outside of the law. So we have the Local Government Transparency Code, which compels us to have to publish out contract information. There's other areas around spend information and things like that. There are some penalties for not providing that information, but it's not significant, but it is still obviously the right thing to be doing, to be acting transparently. In terms of the systems link, which is the utilities, they were 100% compliant in terms of them being lawfully awarded. I actually assisted in the procurement processes directly to put those in place. We just didn't have the contract entries up on Intend. So this time round, all those contract entries are now on Intend, hence why we've moved from 0 to 100%.
Yep.
In relation to Mosaic, there will be contract entries up for some of those things that relate to children's social care. We just haven't got around to actually doing that piece of work. We've focused on Controc, and we have confidence we should be able to apply the same aspects. But yeah, I'm not concerned in terms of there being any high-risk areas of non-compliance on a lawful basis. It's just not being able to provide the assurance on the transparency.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Richard, I've just got a couple of points on, just for my own satisfaction. On page 134, and it's just the very top there, it says payments made to builders for works undertaken for private sector residents, etc., are not covered within the scope of the procurement regulations. Is that because these are grants?
Yes.
Or it's because they're grants, so
Yeah.
they'll pop up somewhere?
Yes, so it's generally for disabled facilities grants, also for grants associated with warm homes funding. So, on that basis, it falls outside of the procurement regime. It's a transfer of funding. We do provide a duty of care around those grants through private sector housing and through our energy team in respect to the warm homes. But the actual contract itself is held between the recipient of the grant funding and the contractor doing the works.
And that goes for the second point then as well, transfers in respect of health and education requirements, same reason.
Some of those are just transfers of funds, so they might come under Section 78 transfers and things like that. So we have a lot of transfer of funding that goes between ourselves from health and into the ICB.
I picked up, Lizzie, you were going to say something.
Disabled facilities grants are audited on an annual basis because we have to sign off that it has complied with the terms and conditions of the grant. So whilst it doesn't cover what Richard's service kind of covers, it will look at compliance with the conditions. Yeah. And it comes to this committee as and when we complete it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Richard, the other one I had was 142, just intriguing, that's all. Halfway down it says, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down, it says, another area for improvement is in respect of the level of narrative justification. The contract manager can complete in order to support the score they have allocated. Is that you looking for more or less?
Both. So some of the justification that's gone up onto the Intend system is incredibly detailed to the point where it breaks the system to try and put it into a spreadsheet, and other aspects are quite brief. So myself and Abigail will be reviewing that, and in order to provide better guidance out to the contract managers.
I thought it was for this committee, it's for the contract managers.
Well, we can provide the reasoning that's been given in the exempt session if you want to go into for any of the contracts, but getting them out into an Excel spreadsheet has proved difficult this time round, and especially as we start moving towards 300 contracts, you might end up with significant levels of detail in the report, but we're happy to provide whatever level of transparency the committee would like.
Okay, thanks. No, I'm happy with it as at the minute. I just wondered whether, I've read the narratives clearly with the bits of the exempt report, and it's enough information for me, but I hope I'm not missing something.
Well, the bit that isn't in the exempt report is the justification, because that literally would mean that the report would go on for pages and pages and pages because of some of the detail that's been put in. If the committee does have any questions in respect to justifications for any of those contracts, though, we do have a much bigger spreadsheet on our computer screens that we can go into and provide some information as required.
Yeah, you said that at the very end. Thank you for that, Richard.
Thanks.
Any other points or questions, members? Councillor Heaney-Graham.
Just a very general one, really. Am I right in saying that the overall responsibility within the Cabinet for this area of procurement is actually with the member for resources? Is that right?
Yes, Councillor Hunt is my portfolio.
It's the resources
holder.
portfolio
Yeah.
that covers the whole procurement issue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, any other points on the white paper? No, okay. Has anybody got any questions or points on the exempt report? Okay, so we don't have to go into exempt session then, do we? Okay, thank you. Richard, thank you very much for coming. Members, can we note the report on procurement management? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, and I declare the meeting closed. Thanks very much.